And listen to this. We are all focused, every single one of us, on one theme. The government knows something and they're not telling us. That's the thing. We focus on that. We don't focus on anything else. That's the pivot point. They know something and they're not telling us. Well, they're still not telling us. They may know, but they're not telling us. I mean, that's it.
Today we're joined by Maxim Furek, author of The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot. This is a wide-ranging conversation into a lot of fun topics. Lance, what'd you think of this?
I loved it. I loved from the second Maxim started talking, we just kind of held on and we were at his mercy at that point. He was engaged in this conversation. He knew what he wanted to talk about. I thought we did a pretty decent job challenging some of his beliefs, but for the most part, this is the Maxim ride, and we're all just hanging on for dear life here. But it's really entertaining. And he's also written a few other books. You can go to his website, Maxim Furek. That's MaximFurek.com. You can see all the books that he's written. He's got a new one coming out called The Smurl Haunting, and that's about Ed and Lorraine Warren. He is prolific, if I dare say so.
He is. He's pretty well known in this community and is an author of a lot of fun books. So definitely check out his books, and we hope you enjoy this interview. Okay, so please follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod. We're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back with Maxim Furek.
All right, we're back with our conversation with Maxim Furek.
Welcome to the podcast, Maxim Furek. Maxim, how are you today?
Tim, I'm wonderful, and I'm very appreciative that you're having me on your podcast. This is wonderful. I do want to say this at the beginning. Thanks to guys like you with these podcasts for letting unknown authors like me have a voice and a platform. I mean, this is awesome. This is transformational for the 21st century. So this is just such a good thing. And let's hope that this continues, free speech, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks for the hard work that you do behind the scenes that nobody knows about. But believe me, I'm really glad to be on your program. It's a wonderful thing for me. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was really cool. There's a lot of things that are going down in the world today that cause people to question what's reality and what's not reality. And you're a writer and you write on topics that we really enjoy. We're more than happy to give someone like you the platform. I mean, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for the compliment.
Continuing with that, thanking you for doing what you're doing. But in this climate, you have to watch what you say. I'm a Florida resident. A couple of years ago, when they were having the congressional UFO hearings, I contacted a number of people, 6 politicians, Marco Rubio, Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Pelton, I believe there were 6 of them. During these congressional hearings of July 2023, David Grush was saying that he knows where the bodies are and he knows where the vehicles are. And I'm saying, okay, let's have him show his cards. Where are they? Where's the proof? We've had this song and dance. We talk about transparency. At any rate, Marco Rubio did respond. I got a letter from him. He was the only one. And then Marco is now Secretary of State. Moving forward, I was on a podcast just recently, and that part where I talked about Marco Rubio and those politicians was scrubbed. It was tagged as though I was saying something inappropriate, when all I was doing was thanking the government for trying to figure out what was happening with UFOs. Nothing political, nothing anti Democrat or Republican, but that thing was flagged. So, they're watching us. I'm just, a little bit concerned about that. And again, I haven't really been caught up personally in this, but I realize that other people have. And so, again, thanks for what you do.
Well, we're already off to a great start with this conversation. Like I'm tingling with anticipation here because it's going to be a really, really cool conversation. But before we get into it, can you let the listeners know who you are, a little bit about your background, etc.?
Yeah, Maxim W. Furek, and it's pronounced Furek. I'm a former psychologist. And what I did specifically, I worked in addictions. So when you talk about addictions and recovery from substances, recovery from behaviors is the most powerful thing that a human being can do. And when I talk to some of these folks about how they got off of the alcohol or how they got off of the heroin, many times they would say this. They say, I don't know, it was a miracle. They just stopped using. And think about this. We talk about hitting bottom. You get drunk, you hit bottom. You get drunk, you lose your job, you lose your car, you lose your wife, whatever. At a certain point, an addict could care less. So what? It's just another bottom. You get used to it. The drug is more important than hitting the bottom. And these people that I talk to that got into recovery, when I say, well, how exactly did it happen? Again, I don't know. It was a miracle. Do with that what you want. But that was my day job. So, addictions and drugs and recovery was pretty important to me. And then I was a rock journalist. I was really felt the passion for rock and roll. I wrote about rock and roll through a sociological lens. In 2016, 9 years ago, I published Shepton, The Myth, Miracle, and Music. That was about a mine disaster in northeastern Pennsylvania in 1963. The top story with the Associated Press in 63 until what event, Lance and Tim, for 10 points?
The Kennedy assassination.
Very good. So Shepton took place in August. Kennedy assassination took place in November. But anyway, this book had all kinds of aspects of the paranormal. Now, again, I didn't go looking for the paranormal. It found me. So this book, 9 years ago, 2016, and then what? Co-Regent Hoodoo, Flying Saucer Esoteric, Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, and now coming out in the next 2 months at the same time. And talk about, I don't know even how to, I get, my skin is tingling. I have a book called The Schmurl Haunting, When Ed and Lorraine Came to Town, and also The Paranormal Apocalypse, a little bit of show and tell. Is This How It Ends? There's the Gray as a Grim Reaper, and that's coming out. Again, 2 books coming out around the same time, so that's going to sort of, like, as we say, it's going to blow things up. But with Shepton 9 years ago, I didn't go looking for the paranormal. It found me, and, I found a demographic. The paranormal community has been very respectful and welcoming to a guy like me. So, I can't be more thankful, for what's happening.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about your latest book, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, today. But very happy to hear that the community has been welcoming to you. And I'm curious, there is a description of you calling you the 21st century incarnation of John Keel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? The Mothman story is one of my favorites personally.
Well, first of all, John Keel has 2 parts. And the one part, he was very prolific and eclectic. He had a lot of interests. And I think that's where I get the tag. They think that I'm an eclectic guy. So that's where that comes. But the other thing is, John Keel was an Indiana Jones. He lived the dream. I didn't do that, but John Keel was over there in Egypt and India. These drug runners put him in a coffin. They made him play Russian roulette. They did all kinds of stuff. They taught him the Indian rope trick. John Keel was a hero. He wrote a book called Jadoo about his adventures. So he's the real thing. And when whoever it was called me the John Keel of the 21st century, they were talking more about the fact that I've written books about Bigfoot and demonology and, flying saucers and all that. I love the paranormal and I love every aspect of it, especially demonology, that if there's anything that rings my bell, that's it. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but I just love the paranormal. Like everybody else, I think there's an Indiana Jones in all of us. We're all trying to find that holy grail. We want to climb that mountain and we're just looking for answers. I'm like you, Tim. I'm like you, Lance. We're just trying to figure it out,
Now, do you find there's crossover in those fields? I know you said you kind of balance those topics a little bit, but in my research in listening to people's stories about Bigfoot, it seems like there is a lot of people who believe there's some connection there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, there seems to be different levels. I do a ton of podcasts, and I do a lot of podcasts with guys from Canada and British Columbia. A bunch of these folks believe that they communicate with Sasquatch. They are the students, and Bigfoot is the teacher. Bigfoot gives them gifts, little treasures. Like the one guy was saying that the house was locked, the door was locked, the bedroom door was locked, and he went in there, and here was a box with something that was in there from Bigfoot. They talk about this. So I can't address that because I don't know about that. I talk to people that claim that they talk to Bigfoot, that Bigfoot likes apples and pears, that Bigfoot likes soft music, not hip hop, not rap. They tell me this. I don't know. I mean, it's not my experience, but I'll say this. When you look at the Sasquatchers and you look at what they have, it's pretty much what J. Allen Hynek called high strangeness. So with the Sasquatchers, you have elements of high strangeness. And what we're talking about is you have the eyewitnesses, sometimes numerous people saying the same thing. You have the calls, the hoots, people hearing that. You have the wooden structures seem to be there to either scare people away or as symbolic of something, we don't know what. With the smells, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, there's this horrible smell of rotten eggs, of wet dog, of whatever. That's pretty much all the same. So you have all this commonality. Now, that in itself is something that gets my attention. There's something there. There's something there of substance. We don't know what it is. But we don't have a carcass and we don't have DNA. And don't let them tell you that we have DNA, because if we did, it would be on the front page of every magazine, every newspaper in the world. So we don't have that. We do have a whole lot of hoaxers. We do have a whole lot of people claiming that they've seen different things. Probably the best evidence we have is the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967. And that's been scrutinized, Lance, probably as much as the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination. So I mean, they have looked at it and digitized it and slowed it down, looked for seams. It seems to be a creature, not a man in a monkey suit. We could see the glute muscles and everything. And here's the thing. I mean, if the three of us were going to go and put together a video, a fake video, if we're going to hoax the world and say that we saw this Bigfoot creature, I mean, don't you think our video would be more than 58 seconds long? I mean, don't you think we would give them a little bit more? This video with Patterson and Gimlin, they were trying to make a documentary to make money so they could do an expedition to find Bigfoot. That's what it was. So they're up in Northern California riding around. They go around the bend. There they see Bigfoot. They had three horses. The horses rear. Patterson was in the front. He reaches into the saddlebag to get the camera, and he's falling off the horse as he's shooting. And they didn't know what they got, but what they got was 58 seconds of film. That's the best we have. And it's sort of equivalent to, say, what is it, 2004, I believe it was, United States Navy film off the coast of San Diego with the Nimitz, where they found the TikTok, video that hovered and then zigzagged and then it went under the water. So this was about as authentic as the Patterson-Gimlin film. So again, it's been scrutinized by everyone. A lot of well-known researchers believe that it's true, and so do I. But it's certainly controversial. But I don't think we have anything better than that. Certainly, the 2023 Colorado train video. The people were there on their honeymoon, their anniversary, and somebody took a shot of this, looked like a Bigfoot walking in the valley. But I don't know. I think that, that wasn't, I don't think that was reputable, but, and I don't know anybody that does. So
specifically speaking of the Patterson-Gimlin film, why is there just a single Bigfoot? Or do Bigfoot creatures travel in packs, or are they typically like an isolated entity?
No. If you look in my book, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, there is a chapter on Albert Ostman, 1924. And this is good stuff because this was before computers and microfiche and all the other stuff. This is before you and I could go and Google Bigfoot and find out all about it and then go and say, yeah, I saw one, This was 1924 when Albert Ostman was a Swedish-Canadian hunter-trapper. And up in British Columbia, somebody was messing with his campsite, taking things, mucking it up and all that. So what he did was he hid himself in a sleeping bag with a rifle. He was going to go and catch the culprit and shoot him. So what happened was 1924, he fell asleep. Something hoisted him on the shoulder and took him for what he thought was miles, threw him and put him gently in this valley. Here, it was a family of Sasquatch, mother, father, daughter, son. And the daughter, Bigfoot, liked Ostman and was feeding him sweet grass. And they weren't threatening. It was a family. They were curious. Ostman got the idea in his head that they were going to use him for procreation. They were going to use him for sex. So he freaked out. So what he did was he had a plan. He had chewing tobacco. He was able to entice the Papa Sasquatch, the father, to take some of this chewing tobacco. The Sasquatch got sick, and then Albert Ostman took off, went back home. So this is 1924. He didn't say anything. He wasn't looking for publicity. But then there started to be stories in British Columbia about these creatures. The natives called them Sasquatch. And Ostman said, that's exactly what I saw. So Albert Ostman contacted John Green. John Green was a British Columbian journalist. He was one of the original four horsemen of Sasquatchery, the pioneers in our field that did all the hard work. And John Green took his narrative, and he believed that Albert Ostman was telling the truth. Albert Ostman talked about how a Bigfoot family would act, what they did, what they looked like. He didn't talk about the smell. And so it could be that that Bigfoot uses that smell as a means of scaring us away. Another pretty interesting theory that I heard was that Bigfoot is interdimensional, and when they come into our dimension from theirs, that they bring along this stench that is just part of it's almost like a potato cellar, that moldy, smelly thing that when they shape-shift into our dimension, they bring that stench with them. Again, just a theory, but with Albert Ostman, he didn't smell anything. John Green thought he was telling the truth. He didn't tell his story until later, and it holds up. There wasn't anything prior to that to describe Bigfoot or to describe Sasquatch. And then, us white folks learned about Bigfoot at the same time. We had heard about Bigfoot, the California abominable snowman. 1958, the Humboldt Times had the first time that Bigfoot saw print was in 58. Thousands of people wrote letters into the Humboldt Times, the newspaper, saying, yes, I believe in the California abominable snowman, or I too have seen it. It hit the wire service, went around the world, and Bigfoot became part of the international lexicon. That was in our craw. 1958, just like in 1947, flying saucers became part of our vocabulary. So 2 red letter dates.
I just want to go back to Ostman real quick. He was held captive, allegedly. He said he was held captive for like almost a week. I'm wondering, did they feed him? Like, what did they do to keep him kind of happy and safe?
From what I recollect, they fed him sweet grass. And I don't know what else, but the sweet grass, what he was. And he talked about this. I mean, he wrote about this extensively. The fact that he sought out John Green, and this was back in the day when these pioneers like John Green and Rene Dahinden, Grover Krantz, all those people, they would go and see somebody, interview them, somebody who said that they had an experience. And so they would write this down. So this was, way back when, this was investigative journalism, back in the day when you just wrote it down. So that was pretty much his narrative. But I believe most researchers believe that what Albert Ostman was saying was the truth. Now, here's the thing. 1924, we have an example of an abduction by a Sasquatch. As far as I know, that's the only case I've ever heard that. Fast forward to 1961, Betty and Barney Hill, the White Mountains of New Hampshire. So they're allegedly abducted and probed. And then that opened up a cottage industry of people like John Mack and Whitney Strieber and everybody else, Bud Hopkins, writing about these abductees. And so many people saying, yes, I too have been abducted and probed. It happened with ufology. It didn't happen with cryptozoology. Just an interesting parallel.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
That is interesting, kind of tracking the cultural tent poles. And it's interesting that Bigfoot wasn't really in the public sphere before the Patterson-Gimlin film in a big way. And now there are people having sightings all over the place. I'm interested in that angle of this. Like you write in your book about mass hallucinations.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Do you think that there's any truth to that being some of this?
My whole premise is this. If it's not flesh and blood, what is it? So I look at this. I call it the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot because we have all these theories about what Bigfoot could be. So metaphorically, the tribes would include Neanderthal, Gigantopithecus, Australopithecus, a missing link. I mean, you name it. Species that are out there that we haven't even discovered yet. So those are the lost tribes. But if it's not flesh and blood, and I already talked about some of the elements of high strangeness that the Sasquatchers talk about. But if it's not flesh and blood, then what is it? Well, Jacques Vallée was talking about spacecraft, and he was saying that the idea of intergalactic travel, that intergalactic extraterrestrial hypotheses no longer works. It's passé, it's old-fashioned. It would just take too much time, too much technology, too much everything, too much energy to go from planet Alpha to Earth. So Vallée and a lot of other people said that the interdimensional theory seems to work better. It makes more sense. Einstein and Rosen had their bridge theory back in the 30s. We now call it the wormhole theory. And basically what it is that if you could take that space-time continuum and fold it in half, instead of the Space Brothers going trillions of miles, they just punch a hole through the space-time continuum and they're here. So that interdimensional theory, it's a theory, but that seems to make more sense than anything else. That's one theory. Mass hallucinations. Take a look at the drone hysteria of 2024 over New Jersey. It was a Rorschach test. Everybody was looking up into the sky and seeing something. You would see something. It's that blank slate theory that a psychiatrist would say, well, Lance, you looked a little troubled today. What's going on? And everybody's looking for a sounding board. Everybody's looking for somebody to listen to their woe. So, everybody will have something to say. Well, my dog bit me or whatever, Mass hallucinations thing was almost like a Rorschach test that everybody was looking up into the sky and seeing something and feeling, if not fear, feeling apprehension. There was no government talking heads that were able to successfully say, this is what's there. They either over-talked it or under-talked it or just could not frame it. Nobody did a good job. And believe me, I tracked this from day one. Take a look at, that was 2024. Take a look at 2023. The same thing with the Chinese balloons, these humongous balloons. We shot some down off the coast and one up in Canada. What was that all about? What was the closure? What was the final thing? What did China say? What did we say? How did we resolve that? We didn't. It's still hanging up there, and we're still frustrated with the lack of answers. Answers that we, the people, really should have a right to have. If there's not fear, there's apprehensions about things. And certainly the drone hysteria of 2024 was a great example of that. Nobody could tell us what it was. But the one guy that was in charge of, he made the drones, he said his theory was that terrorists snuck a bomb from Ukraine to New Jersey, and it was government drones flying over Jersey looking for that heat signature, trying to find that bomb. The Republican representative from South Carolina claimed that it could have been from outer space, that it could have been extraterrestrial. So we're having all of these, theories floating out there. Nobody knew what they were, and everybody. And again, when you talk about mass hallucinations, what about a mass, a pulse, a national pulse that we're all feeling the same thing? And that's pretty much what it was. We were frustrated. We were concerned. We weren't getting the answers that we thought we would get. And even with, and nobody talks about this, but with the congressional UFO hearings of July of 2023 and November of 2024, what did that get us? I mean, how much closer are we to the truth? We're not. We talk about transparency. There isn't any. It's a song and dance. And I'll tell you what, people in the government only get this information if they have a need to know. And my theory is this, is that Tim and Lance and me, we don't have a need to know. And also those politicians that were having the congressional hearings, they do not have a need to know. Whatever is happening is buried deep within some Department of Defense that has an alphabet thing like KGB or CIA or FBI that we don't even know about, that is being funded by these dark, the dark funding ops. There's something going on there that we are not privy to, and we're not going to find out about. The congressional hearings of 2023 and 2024 was a smokescreen, a song and dance. It was a means of appeasing us. But I'll tell you what, it didn't appease me. It really pissed me off because there was no closure. David Grush said he knew where the saucers were and he knew where the aliens were, and he would go and disclose that information, that classified information, to the right people under the right circumstances. Well, we've had a couple of years to make that happen. And you tell me, I mean, did you have him on your program, Tim?
No.
Did he give you the answer? I mean, I'm still waiting. So,
well, what is so highly protected in this conversation? Like, why don't we have a need to know? What is it going to do? Like, blow our minds so much that we can't function?
And listen, I need to go and Google this, but remember the big thing was 9/11. Just prior to 9/11, I believe it was Rumsfeld was explaining to the people, and Google this, find this out because I don't have it, but was saying that they lost, I think it was trillions of dollars of funding that was going to some Department of Defense, black ops. They lost the money. Now this should have made every taxpayer hysterical. What happened to these? It might have been trillions, but it might have been billions, whatever. I mean, what's the difference?
2.3 trillion.
So he talked about that, correct?
Yeah.
And then we had 9/11, and so that conversation about the 2 point whatever. Well, how much was it?
2.3 trillion that the Department of Defense cannot track in transactions made.
That 2.3 trillion got usurped by the 9/11 thing. And everybody, and that we put our focus on that. So we forgot about that. But here's my theory. The government has special entities for all these things you could think about, sci-fi things, time travel, remote viewing, astral projection, mind control, whatever, you name it, anything you could think about, they do that. I did a conference 2 years ago. The guy next to me was from San Francisco, worked for the government in remote viewing. And man, did I want to pick his brain and find out what he knew, but he says, sorry, I can't tell you. He'd have to kill me before he told me anything. But people like Jacques Vallée allegedly were very good remote viewers. So, we have people dealing with this, the government does, to get a military edge. That's why we do it. And everybody thought that it was Montauk, Long Island. Well, probably wasn't Montauk, but there were probably like a whole bunch of Montauks all over the place. We thought that Montauk was the one epicenter with all this stuff. Probably wasn't. There's probably all kinds of places, in Virginia and Pennsylvania and wherever, that they have these enclaves of academics, that are trying to find these answers. So that's what I believe. And again, we do not have the need to know. I don't care if you're a taxpayer, if you vote, you do not have a need to know. And those politicians do not have a need to know. And I mean, they may think that they do, but they don't. So that's why when we have these congressional hearings, and I watch that. I mean, man, I watch it. I'm waiting for the answer, Didn't happen. And then even with November of 2024, who was it? Luis Elizondo was talking about this. He knew something. And then they found out that with his one presentation, again, this was just one thing, but he was in Philadelphia. He was charging $50 a head for his presentation. He was doing a PowerPoint presentation showing an alleged flying saucer in Romania that was actually some kind of a lampshade, candelabra, whatever, something that George Adamski would have put together. For some of your viewers who may not know George Adamski, he was in the 1950s, claimed that he was taken aboard flying saucers by people from Venus. He would show photographs of these, what do you call those, chicken incubation crates? You put the hatched...
Yeah, like an incubator or something. I'm not sure.
And he would say that was a flying saucer, or he would show like light bulbs, and people believed it. I mean, come on, they believed Adamski. It was the most podunk, stupid thing going, but I mean, he had followers, and also including the FBI. The FBI had a dossier on Adamski. They couldn't figure him out. He was like a Polish American guy with maybe a third grade or ninth grade education, spoke broken English, but he was a good looking blonde dude, and the women loved him, and the women wrote all of the stuff for him. He didn't write his books. He had everybody else writing for him. So the FBI couldn't figure out what was going on with Adamski. He had a cult following. And if anything, he was a bit of a hoaxer, but Adamski talked about the Space Brothers, and he was there with the New Age. He probably was one of the pioneers of New Ageism. He was saying that the aliens were telling us this: if you don't stop, with the bombs like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you're going to destroy the Earth. And so the Space Brothers were giving us this warning to go and clean up our act. So this is what Adamski brought to the fore. That wonderful message, that message of peace, even though it was surrounded by just a whole lot of nonsense, but just an interesting dude,
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
As far as the government and UFO technology, I would really love to believe that they had something else going on behind the scenes. But I watched some of those hearings too, and I got the feeling that they don't know shit. Actually, they don't know any more than us.
I know.
Yeah, and but I don't know that anyone in the government does. In looking at the government. Taking a step back, like, it is so disorganized, and not just this administration, but pretty much all of them. I just don't think they can keep a secret like that.
And listen to this. We are all focused, every single one of us, on one theme. The government knows something and they're not telling us. That's the thing. We focus on that. We don't focus on anything else. That's the pivot point. They know something and they're not telling us. Well, they're still not telling us. They may know, but they're not telling us. I mean, that's it. It doesn't get beyond that.
But do you think they know anything about Bigfoot? Like that's one thing that is interesting to me, that we don't hear these stories of like the Men in Black or like government agents or something like that covering up for Bigfoot.
I've heard theories that that the government wants to control Bigfoot narratives because Bigfoot inhabits lands that has all kinds of mineral rights and things like this. I don't know about that. I don't think so. I think that with Roswell and with Bigfoot, there's a kernel of truth and then a whole lot of innuendo and rumor. With Roswell, there's something there, and what it is, we're not sure, because, I mean, the government's lied to us so many times about the weather balloons and everything else. And now when they try to tell us that they're telling the truth, nobody believes them. So, we have that. And then with Bigfoot, Bigfoot's turned into just a cottage industry. Over the weekend, I was at the Susquehanna Valley Mall, Central Pennsylvania Bigfoot Expo. Thousands and thousands of people. This was huge. This is something good for our backyard. I mean, I couldn't believe the people there. I mean, people of notoriety. This is huge. Bigfoot is a cottage industry. It's tremendous. I mean, call it what you will. It's a moneymaker for a lot of people. So does it exist? Well, it exists on some level in some dimension, but is it a flesh and blood dimension? That's the real question. But, you were asking about mass hallucinations, but, in interdimensional theory, mass hallucinations, or even the fact that we can collectively conjure something, manifest something mentally. And, that's something I think we need more research into that. Again, I believe, and here's my I guess my spiritual thing, but I think, we're made in the likeness and image of God. I believe we all have abilities. You could tap into those abilities if you stop your 9-to-5 job and just do prayer and meditation. You could figure out what you got going for, and you could probably levitate and see into another dimension and all that. But it takes work. It takes dedication. And if you're like me, you got a 9-to-5 to do, and you don't have time to go and, do that prayer and meditation. Before Christianity, we had the pagans and the Wiccans, and that's what they believed. They were healers. They believed that everybody has the innate ability to go and cure people, to heal, as well as to put a curse on people, to put a pox on them. So that's their belief. And women tend to get the acclaim or the acknowledgement for having a sixth sense, a mother's sense, or whatever. But I believe that we all do. I think we all have some sort of a psychic ability, whatever that is.
I'm curious, how far back are some of the earlier or earliest accounts of Bigfoot?
Yeah. So in 1958, when the Humboldt Times had their expose about Bigfoot, and we heard about it, people started to come forward and say, wait a second, this is nothing new. Grover Krantz, who was one of the 4 horsemen of Sasquatchery, was the first researchers to start using the name Sasquatch, the proper name. Coastal peoples from British Columbia were talking about Sasquatch for thousands of years, with the oral tradition, with totem poles, with paintings, with everything. They knew about Sasquatch before the white man did. So what we found out in 1958 was relatively new. This had been going on for thousands of years. So the coastal peoples believed that Sasquatch preserved the environment, took care of the environment, believed that to see Sasquatch was something sacred. Sasquatch was a shapeshifter. It could shape and manifest into trees and, rocks and things like that. Some people believe that Bigfoot has, by location, rapid transport, that you see it in front of you and then it's behind you, that it has these abilities. Some folks that claim to talk to Bigfoot claim that Bigfoot has communicates telepathically. So we've heard all of these things, and that it may live in another dimension. In being from Pennsylvania, we're well familiar with the Chestnut Ridge area in western Pennsylvania that seems to have the most UFO and Bigfoot sightings in the Commonwealth. And keep in mind that as far as Bigfoot sightings, the most popular states are California, Washington, and Pennsylvania or Florida. Take your pick, the skunk ape or Bigfoot. But in western Pennsylvania and Chestnut Ridge, there's not only an incredible amount of Bigfoot sightings, but Bigfoot in conjunction with flying saucers or orbs. And we know this because there's a guy named Stan Gordon that writes about this. He documents this. And a typical Stan Gordon book will be like, for example, Farmer and Mrs. Brown went out to the barn at 6 o'clock at night to feed the cow, and they saw this Bigfoot coming out of an orb. So stuff like that Stan Gordon writes about, but there's numerous narratives about that.
Well, what do you make of that? Like Bigfoot with the orbs, right? I can't tell. Is that someone who's sort of got like a preconceived notion that these things exist, so they're more likely to see something like that or believe something like that? Or is it the opposite in that Bigfoot or UFO or whatever it is thinks that person is ready to see them? Like, do you know what I mean?
All good questions, all good theories. I don't know. When I first heard about the Bigfoot UFO connection, I thought, this is ridiculous. I didn't believe it at all. This was just too much fantasy. But when I started to read Stan Gordon's narratives, there's too many people seeing the same thing. There's something going on. I don't know what it is, but I mean, it's not mass hallucinations. I mean, it's just like different people in different counties seeing the same thing. So I don't know what that is, but I believe that there's something there. And I think it just speaks to the fact that both Bigfoot and flying saucers have some interdimensional, maybe psychic properties. That's what I think it is. Back home, my neighbor saw two Bigfoot, a cinnamon one and a black one. I questioned him about it. I asked him about it. He said that they looked curious and then they walked away. They walked like humans. And then I called Stan Gordon. I said, Stan, I got a contact for you. So Stan contacted this guy and took his story, his narrative. There was another one. There was a former police officer, as the chief of police, and he's now the district magistrate here in Pennsylvania. He got a phone call when he was in law enforcement, and this older guy was leaving his dog out to take a leak. And here he saw this 11-foot thing. He said it was a Sasquatch. And the older guy wasn't afraid. And do you know why he said he wasn't afraid? He said, He said the Bigfoot had kind eyes. It had kind eyes, so he wasn't afraid. And the guy's name was Craig Long. Craig was the district magistrate there in Catawissa, Pennsylvania. Yeah, so there's numerous accountings of people seeing these things. I mean, I have never seen anything. I mean, I thought I did, but I didn't. There's something there, and what it is, we're not sure. But again, this is the supernatural. This is the paranormal, and it's part of the scientific. We just don't know what part it plays. And I'll give you an example. You know, when you watch an apple drop, cause and effect. So the effect is we see the apple dropping. But the cause is Newton's theory of gravity. So that's an easy one. But when you see flashing lights and you see cryptids and you see all these things, it may possibly have a scientific cause and effect, but we don't know what that law is. We don't know what that is now. So all we have are hypotheses trying to figure out, what it is, what these things are.
Maxim, what is next for you?
I mean, my theory is this, Tim, that, you got to have balls in the air. You just have as many balls in the air as you can. And if you're lucky, you need a little bit of fate and serendipity and karma. But if you're lucky, the universe will acknowledge those balls and then take you for a ride. So I'm just hoping that, it happens for me. But I have two books coming out. The one is the Paranormal Apocalypse. Is This How It Ends? And I take a look at fear. And I contend that fear is the great motivator, that we are motivated by fear through political, religious, and social entities. They like to keep us in fear. And keep in mind that it was H.P. Lovecraft that said that fear is the most elemental of emotions, and fear of the unknown is the most powerful. H.P. Lovecraft got it right better than Freud, Jung, and everybody else. H.P. Lovecraft, give it to the guy. For saying that. So my book is coming out looking at that, and I think it's going to make its mark because it's, and I'd love to be back on your show to talk about it, but it's not about so much about flying saucers and cryptids and demonology, but it's about something else. It's about the human spirit, emotion, what makes us tick. Most of us, maybe 95% of us, are the followers. We're the lemmings following, the other lemmings over the cliff. There's very few of us that are free thinkers, rational thinkers, using common sense. So anyway, that's my theory in Paranormal Apocalypse. And then the other one is the Schmerl haunting when Ed and Lorraine came to town. I was personal friends with Ed and Lorraine Warren from Monroe, Connecticut. Met them in 1988 when they were on a 15-city book tour to promote The Haunted, which was about the West Pittston Schmerl haunting. The latest Conjuring film is called Last Rites. That is about the Schmerl haunting. That is going to come out after my book, The Schmerl Haunting. And I want to say one other thing, too, and you could give me your take on this. West Pittston was in my backyard. I mean, I had to go there. I met Ed and Lorraine. They were friends of mine. I maintained a friendship for years. And then the third part of this troika was this. Annabelle, the demonic, the possessed doll, was down in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, July 11th, 12th, and 13th. So I went down there on the Devils on the Run tour and paid $40 for me and $40 for my wife, $80 inside the door to see Annabelle. Friday, July the 11th, I met Dan Rivera. Dan was the chief handler for Annabelle. Dan gave me his phone number. I was supposed to call Dan on Monday, July the 14th. Dan died on Sunday, July the 13th. Dan Rivera, the handler, died the day before I was supposed to talk to him. I was one of the last paranormal authors to talk to him. A lot of people are saying, let's not talk about this. Let's let his family grieve in peace. And I'm saying they will find their way to grieve, and they will, because that's what human beings do. But there's a lot of other people that are saying there's something going on here, something of the demonic that just maybe, like, for example, in my book, The Schmerl Haunting, the psychic Vincent sisters believed that there was demonic energies that might have worn him down. Chris McConnell, I believe, was the grandson of Ed and Lorraine. He believed that they should have kept Annabelle locked up in Monroe, Connecticut, and not taking Annabelle on tour on the road. And as you remember, when Annabelle was in New Orleans, there was a plantation fire, and then there was the jailbreak, and there was something else. 3 things happened on the 3 days that Annabelle was in New Orleans. So when I talked to Dan Rivera, Dan thought it was a coincidence. And when I talk about Dan Rivera's death, there's a lot of people that say it was a coincidence. But there's a lot of people that said, no, there may be something else at play. So I don't know. I mean, your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
It's tough to take like isolated moments or isolated events and kind of force them into the narrative of around something that's haunted, right? Or allegedly haunted. Like the James Dean's car, right? Wasn't it, who was it that said to him, he pulled up to the restaurant and this other actor, I forget who it was, it said to him, oh, you're going to die in that car. And then he dies in the car. But I mean, I remember watching an interview with that actor. Who was that? Like some...
Yeah. This is familiar to me too. I'll Google it as you talk, but keep going.
Yeah. So it was like a renowned actor who, young James Dean comes up and he like goes up to the restaurant, he has dinner, and then he wants to show him his car, and he's like, you're going to die in that car.
Well,
but then they interviewed that actor later on, and they were like, did you have this psychic premonition? Like, what happened? And he was like, no, I didn't. He came up in a Porsche, and it's James Dean, and I said, if you're like reckless, you're going to die.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Just to chime in real quick, it was Alec Guinness.
Alec
that
Guinness,
was the actor.
yes.
And that's probably why that played into it a little bit more, because he was Obi-Wan Kenobi, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, what a great detail to that. Yeah. So, but with the Annabelle doll, like, there are just so many stories about that. There's so many people who will walk away from that with just like shortness of breath and, feeling nauseous or something. So while it might not be demonic possession, I think there's something that's happening in someone's subconscious that is causing them to see these bad things now, or causing them to feel sick or something. Or it could be demonic possession.
I was there in Gettysburg. I looked into Annabelle's eyes. All I saw was a Raggedy Ann doll. I didn't sense anything, feel anything, and I hung out with Dan Rivera, which was kind of cool. I mean, that was really kind of neat. That was
that sounds
high
very cool.
point of it. So that was it. Nice guy. He was a Christian guy. They're all Christians. They all believe that the power of Satan is tremendous, but the power of God is greater. So, if you go into these places, you need to be prepared with holy water and a crucifix and all the other things. Then that's their belief. So that was the thing. But the Schmerl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine comes to town, is going to be hitting real soon. I think at the end of August, and hopefully that's going to be up on Amazon.
I can't even believe that we've almost been talking for an hour.
Wow. Well, you guys are good. You're good. You're quite loquacious, if I might say.
Well, thank you very much, Max, for spending some time with us and telling us about your books and just having this really fun, interesting conversation. We really appreciate it.
really want to thank you too for taking the genre of the paranormal seriously and to talk about it in a serious manner. I mean, I think that's what we need to do, just make it a little bit more academic and help to validate it more in the eyes of the public and also the scientific community. That's what we need to do. And I think if anything, if I could do that, if I could maybe articulate some of that, then I think that then I'm doing my job. That's what I attempt to do. So.